So we have a number of questions here in different forms, but I'll try and ask it in my own words. Lots of concern about how reservations would impact the excellence, the quality, and the output from the IITs and similar institutions.
Yeah, can I just add to that? In fact, because this is the eternal debate in India of excellence versus relevance. That's one thing to flag. Secondly, in India we don't have genuine land reforms and so on. So a lot of things are by proxy. For example, the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme is as if it's a proxy for something else. Similarly, reservation could be a proxy for genuine entitlements. And today, IITs have a strength of about 5,000 students. After reservations are implemented starting this year, it's going to be double. So it's a huge infrastructure challenge, teaching challenge, and so on. So I think this is it's a big question on IITs' minds. It's caused a lot of debate in the country.
Yeah, it is a very big question, and rightly so, because it's a question that needs to be discussed and debated and assessed. Again, you may be getting bored with my bringing in Niti and Naya into everything. It is to say that we just on principle decide 50% would be reserved for this category no matter what happens. That's a Niti. The Naya is what happens. Does it reduce actually the quality of doctors that we produce or engineers that we produce? To what extent? Well, let me just elaborate on that. Would it be that those who benefit from it come from the upper layers of those reserved castes? Could there be that they come from low caste but nevertheless prosperous families? There are lots of them. You could get the mismatch between all these is quite serious, and the economic criteria often does not match this thing. I think I have not taken a position on that, but I reject both these straightforward positions. One is to say that it's perfectly fine, nothing to worry about, because there is something to worry about. We do want good professionals, but we do also want justice. And there is no question that there is a long history of that people from certain caste groups could continue to dominate all the important jobs, whether in government or in engineering or in medicine and so on. And it doesn't have to be as caste-ridden, with as caste-ridden a history as, say, Kerala. Kerala, people often forget, had actually the highest case of untouchability. And somehow, dialectically, that is probably one of the reasons why the anti-caste movement had such a progressive role. It's a very complex issue. In Bengal, which is my state, caste is not that important, even in marriage and so on. The fact of the matter, however, is that if you looked at the leadership, not only of business, of academia, of politics, of all political parties, from the right to the left, basically there are three castes: Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vaidya. The third is mine. And pretty much all of them come from that. Now, there is an issue there to be addressed. So I don't take the view either that, look, this is just wrong. All we need is just merit-based admission. First of all, as I might mention in Harvard, the system of admission is, we don't have any rule like the caste reservation, none. There was one year when we sometimes scrutinize internally, and I was put in a scrutiny role and see what the admission people did. And one of the things is that for the same performance, in terms of SAT scores, etc., if you came from a very disadvantaged school, you got bigger credit than if you came from the top layer of private schools. So what Harvard did, and I thought that about 10 to 15% of our admissions were affected by that. And I think that was a good policy, because what it was doing was to look after potential, but not judge potential just by exam results. Bear in mind that if you're disadvantaged, if there's no one in your family who has ever read or written or been able to read or do math, you have a huge problem in homework in a way that people who come from well-educated families don't. So I think it's a question of convert the question from an easy question to a narrow question and see what would be the results of it and what would be a kind of the best way we can do in catering both to the justice side as well as the demand and need for efficiency in delivering professional services. I think it's that balancing. If you ask me what my intuition on this is, my intuition doesn't go very much more. But that's mainly because even though I'm pleased that you know that I spend a lot of time in India, I haven't spent enough time to be able to study this, and really I think there are other people probably more qualified to do it. But what shocks me a little is that compared with studies of academic performance and their long-term results, there were great studies. There's one study in Harvard, in America, done by two former presidents, one of Harvard, one of Princeton, by Derek Bork, who was president of Harvard, and Bill Bowen, who was president of Princeton. It's called The Shape of the River. It's a quote from Mark Twain, where Mark Twain said, to be a good navigator of a boat, you don't have to know only the next bend, but also the shape of the river. And the point that they're making is that if you look at these people who are favorably treated, the 15% I was referring to, if you look at their performance at the end of their Harvard education or Princeton education, they don't so to have, they do better than admission, but not dramatically better. But then if you follow through their lives, and Bowen and Bork were looking at data covering 7 or 8 decades, then you find that in terms of activities that came for people who came from under affirmative action, their propensity to get into law, do pro bono activity among the law, in engineering, do a lot of activities like slum construction and rebuilding is much greater. So the Bowen conclusion was that if you judge it by the shape of the river, the policies justify themselves much more than if you judge it only by the next bend.
So we are out of time, and while you were giving your talk, I was sitting here and thinking about the fact that this is a get-together, a conference of IITians from all the IITs, and that I sat with the Prime Minister when we inaugurated it a couple of days ago in the morning, and we have you here doing the closing speech. Two people who taught at Delhi School of Economics. So there has to be something to be said about excellence. When you look at this, is just a coincidence, and I was thinking about it, that we as the group of IITians invited two people from the Delhi School of Economics to actually give us the opening and our closing talks. There has to be something to be said about excellence, and that, institutions that build that image. And, I just hope all of us here are able to live up to the kind of hopes and the kind of goals that you have set. And, we've never had a Nobel Laureate from the IITs, and maybe in the next 50 years we should get more than one. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I now request Arjun to present a small memento to Professor Sen.
Thank you very much. Oh my God, we're giving me a break. Absolutely.